This morning we have an amazing keynote speaker for you. Let's give a big round of applause for Elizabeth Suarez.
How many of you want to be a scientist? Okay, raise your hands. Okay, how many of you want to be an engineer? How many of you want to study math? Yes. And how many of you will love to do technology stuff like what these guys back there are doing? Perfect, perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little background of what I've done and why STEM is so important. So let me start with who am I? I'm Elizabeth Suarez. I actually grew up in this wonderful island called Puerto Rico. Spanish is my first language. I learned English when I was going into little elementary school. Those are my parents, Cuban immigrants. My mom and dad were from Cuba. And then those are my older brothers. And then that's me with that big forehead in the back. So that is back in Puerto Rico, where I guess there was no color pictures back then. That's how old I am. Don't try to figure out how old I am, okay? So a teacher in third grade told me, you know, you're so good in math, you should do accelerated math. And due to her, I was able to then go into sixth grade, and I was in third grade, but I was doing sixth grade math and everything. By the time I got into high school, I was doing calculus. Now, you would think I was this nerd just doing math. Actually, I also was this girl that loved to have fun. I went to an all-girls Catholic school in Puerto Rico. And basically, like the pictures show here, yes, I was National Honor Society. I was president of the club. I also did a valedictorian of my class. But at the end of the day, the key thing was that science was very prevalent in my education, as well as math. Like I said, in third grade, that's when the teacher realized that I was so good at math. And then as well, drama. Believe it or not, I was the lead in almost every theater production that my high school put together. Why STEM for me? I mean, it was all of a sudden, so if you love drama, wouldn't you want to go to New York and do Broadway? Wouldn't you want to go and do politics? Wouldn't you want to go and be a professor or something? Actually, I always looked at STEM as something that looked at you have to stop, you have to think, you have to engage, and you have to make magic. And that's what I did. When I was in high school, as a sophomore, as a junior, people were like, oh, you need to be an engineer. Yes, I am an engineer, but I did not become an engineer only because people told me I needed to become an engineer. At that early age, I realized I have to stop and think if I really want to be an engineer. And why do I want to be an engineer? And what would an engineering degree get me? And I did that. I stopped and I thought about it. And I realized that I needed to engage into it to see if it was worthwhile. So I was very thankful that my mother was a chemist, and she knew several engineers. And she actually knew a chemical engineer that happened to be a woman. And she introduced me to that woman. And I was in awe with that woman. I looked up to her. I was so fascinated with how she dressed, how she composed herself, how she talked, the work she did. She took me to work, and I shadowed her for a couple days. If you have that opportunity, make sure you do that. I was able to see what she did at work, and it was, for me, magical. And that's when I realized I'm going to engage in engineering, I'm going to study it, and I'm going to make magic. I actually was an A and B student in college at Cornell, doing quite well, starting hard, doing everything I needed to do, doing the labs and everything, and all of a sudden, physics showed up. Wait till you all have to take physics in high school. So I took it in high school. I thought it was fine. So I get into the class. You know, I'm bilingual. I thought they were talking a third language that I did not know. Literally, that was the first day I do. I'm sitting there doing, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So basically what I did is I realized that they have tutors and they have teaching assistants. So I became the best friend of the teaching assistant person. This fellow was getting his PhD in physics, and he helped me because you know what? By the end of the semester, I had a D, like in David, going into the finals. Tell that to your parents. Calling back home to Puerto Rico to tell to my mom, hey, I have a D in physics. That's okay. I'm going to flunk it. And basically what I did is I stopped. I really thought about it. I engaged into working even harder. And at the end of the day, I passed the test with a high B plus, and I passed the class. And what it was is I made magic. I was able to continue in my chemical engineering degree, and I graduated with a 3.5 average, even with almost thinking that I was actually gonna basically flunk that course. So that's a key thing, that even in high school, even now in middle school, and when you get into high school, and when you get into college, and when you go into your first job, even now, I still stop, think, engage whatever I need to engage into, and make the magic that I need to do for my clients. I also got my MBA and then started working for Pepsi-Cola International. And that was a fun job. How many of you know the artist, he already passed, Michael Jackson? Do you know of Michael Jackson? Guess what? I met Michael Jackson in Buenos Aires, Argentina. You know why? Because back in the 90s, Michael Jackson was the spokesperson for Pepsi-Cola. So he came to Argentina for a concert, and because I was working for Pepsi-Cola International, I was high up in management, I was very educated, I knew Spanish, everything. They gave me the opportunity to actually sit with him in the green room and entertain him, speak to him and everything until he went up and performed. I also worked for the telecom industry, and that took me worldwide to different places, not only in Latin America, but also Europe. And I concluded in the beautiful Bay City of San Francisco. And I worked there when the internet, all that wonderful stuff, you all have smartphones. I was one of the first people in the 90s working on this concept of smartphones and everything. It is what, back in 1992, 93, 94, 95, when I worked there was no smartphones. Can you imagine that? There were cell phones. Do you know how big the cell phones were? Like this big. Now, what do I do professionally? Why did I change in 2002? What happened is I stopped and I thought, I did a lot of thinking, I engaged and I made magic. And why did I stop? Because at that time, I already had a daughter. I had a 2-year-old daughter. She's now 16. And I basically came to realize that continuing moving all over the United States was not going to make sense for her. So that's when I said, I cannot continue following my corporate America career. I need to create my own magic. I am not here today because I made this all by myself. I showed you my parents and my brothers, and they were extremely instrumental. And still, even though my parents no longer are with me, my brothers are still very instrumental in me continuing to develop. But I also have a family that basically, there you see them, my husband, that's the avid hiker and outdoorsman, and our daughter, our 16-year-old daughter, that she also was a GSTEM girl in middle school, and now she's a sophomore in high school, looking at seeing what colleges she wants to go to and what she wants to study. And when you ask her, she will tell you something related to science. And you ask her, why science? And she says, because it is challenging and fun at the same time. The reason why I'm showing you these pictures, I want you to realize one thing. As a science person, as a math person, as a technology person, as an engineering person, don't think that you are going to be the nerd. You will be the nerd, but you will be the smart nerd. You will be the nerd that everybody wants to have as a friend, and you will be the fun person to be around. So I want to make sure all of you ladies that you're interested in STEM, keep your interest in STEM. Because everything you use today is related to STEM. For instance, how many of you have a smartphone? The majority. How many of you have an Instagram account? And how many of you are Snapchatting? Ooh, parents are already letting you Snapchat. Okay, what do you think that is? That is all related to technology. Without technology, you would not have your smartphone. You will not have your Snapchat. You will not have your Instagram. Also, it's related to math. Do you know all technology in the background has math equations behind it? every single one of them. It's also related to science, because science, as well as engineering, is all about processes. So without figuring out what to do with a process and what to do with how to develop a phone, you can't develop the phone. You need the process. You need to figure out the math. You need to figure out the process. You need to figure out the science. And you need to figure out the engineering. Now, you could be like what my daughter told me at your age when I encouraged her to do STEM. And you know what she told me? She said, "Oh, Mommy, please, I'm going to have people doing that for me." And I was like, "Oh, honey, please, you need to know how to do it so you can supervise them correctly." I did drop the mic on her. She like stood there and was speechless. She walks away, my husband and I high-five each other. Because that's what it is. Yes, I know you're not going to do the algebra equation when you're 40. You may be. You never know. I mean, I know you're not going to be doing the beakers, getting mixed up in beakers when you are 50. You may be. But you need to know what is it that needs to happen and what are the processes involved in it, because how are you going to stop, think, engage, and most importantly, how are you going to make magic in the work that you have to do? If you have 10 people working for you, doing all the work, but you don't know the work they do. When you stop, you can start it now in middle school. Stop and think, should I not pay attention to this class? Think, what would that do to you if you don't pay attention to your math class? Therefore, engage in paying attention, engage in doing your homework, and make magic. Isn't it great when you get an A? How many of you like to get A's? Isn't it great? Don't your parents get all excited and stuff? I mean, I know like my daughter's like, "Oh my God, I got an A." But at the same time, if you don't stop, if you don't think, if you don't engage, you're not going to make the magic of getting the A. It's the same when you go to high school. In high school, that's where it all starts also. There's going to be some electives. Stop, think what electives you want to choose. Engage very much into that elective, because that elective is going to complement all your studies of science, technology, engineering, and math. So take the time to think, and the same thing in college. And even at my age, this is what I will leave you with. Even at my age, I have to stop, I have to think, I have to engage in order to make magic with my clients. Okay, smile, ladies. Raise your hands. Go ahead. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And remember, pay attention in your science, technology, engineering, and math classes. Have a good day.